Hey everyone, welcome. I'm super excited to have Rishad with us today. I'm going to let him do his intro, but I think we could take up the whole half an hour talking about all the amazing accomplishments he's had. Thrilled to have you, Rishad. Please introduce yourself and then let's dive in, my friend.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, Bobby, I'm in my second career. My first career, I spent 37 years at the Publicis Group, where I was the chief strategist and growth officer. So that was career number one, built around one company and a job and a title. And career two, which is about 7 years old now, was a company of one versus a company of 100,000. No job, but work, and no title excepting self-employed author. So those are my two careers, which altogether total 45 years.
Love it. Love it, Rishad. And just before coming in, you're talking about what you love. Give me that passion statement or what drives you these days to still stay so active. I know you're engaged in so many different communities. Tell us a bit about that.
There are obviously a lot of different things on the personal front. It's my wife and two daughters who are my three bosses, the grown-up daughters. Personally, I enjoy swimming, running. I love music and movies and television and things like that. And then with regard to vacation, I help people see, think, and feel differently about how to grow themselves, their teams, and their business. And I do it through a lens of reinvention. So I would probably say reinvention is the center of what I do. And staying reinvented to stay on the right side of my wife and two daughters, helping companies reinvent themselves, and making sure with some combination of both physical and mental input, I stay alive to reinvent.
Or more than alive, I think you're thriving, my friend, with the value and impact you're having. The way I hear that, Rishad, is I think we share a common hunger for the humanity.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you and I have been just starting to have that conversation about humanity plus AI, right? So let's dive in, my friend. In any context you like, how would you like to define respect in the workplace?
So the way I consider respect in the workplace is I would do it on four different levels. The first is respect in the workplace is listening to and paying attention to other people and not thinking that you are the center of the world. So, a very famous author, unfortunately no longer living, called David Foster Wallace, once basically gave a little talk called This is Water, where he basically says paying attention to another human being is the nicest and most respectful thing you can do. So that is one. Second is respect for yourself in a very strange way, that you hold yourself up to high standards of excellence and integrity and learning. A third form of respect is to understand that regardless of what you may or may not like about the ecosystem of institutions around you, that you have to respect them while you might work to change them. You respect a position or a office, you might not respect the person in it, and you might want to get the person out of it, or you might decide that you want to change the position. But while you're doing that, you have to respect what has been put in place before you and recognize that to replace it, you have to construct something. You just can't blow up something, which I think is the third one. And the fourth one is actually respecting the reality that everybody, yourself, the other person, and the institution are all human. And a commonality among humans is A, we always make mistakes, and B, we're all going to die. So respect time.
Love it, my friend. Thank you. The one that for all through four are very powerful. The first one just brought up a memory. One of the drivers of my thinking of this framework for the respect quotient was I bet you've had this experience. You both travel a lot.
Yep.
sitting next to somebody, and the classic business traveler thing is to put your headphones on and open up your laptop. And every now and then there'll be somebody who looks like they want to chat, and so I'll be respectful and hesitatingly at first take the headphones off and start to peel my layers of judgment of that face value judgment I had of the person. And always left with understanding somebody better because I took the time to listen and engage. I think we're really lacking that, and we're hiding behind technology to really do that level of listening and connection. So thank you for that.
Okay. Really.
Share some examples of when you've seen cultures that are really doing well and authentically living respect. We all know, right? You can do those values exercises and have posters all over a building, but that's not really how it comes to fruition. How have you seen it when it's just ingrained in the ethos of a company culture?
So I would say that it's ingrained in the ethos of a company culture when A, people believe they are listened to, which is number one, which means they have a voice and they are listened to, if that makes sense. And the other one is to recognize a culture is what people do when nobody is looking, which by its very nature is a form of respect, because if you don't have mutual respect, it's impossible to have a great culture. So I believe the commonality, which is why I like the respect quotient, the common quotient among all organizations with great cultures is they respect each other. But they also tend to do two other things. And all these three or four are all valid. So the most respectful companies respect each other. They also respect the work. So they care a lot about the product or the service they create. They respect talent and obviously people, both internal talent and customers. And this might be unpopular, but they also respect financial results. So they both want financial results, and if the financial results are not good, they pay attention to it as a signal from the market that something may be off.
Yeah, thanks. I'm hearing in a lot of those true personal commitment. We talk a lot about accountability, but I think before accountability comes commitment. And when I can take ownership for my part, right? And really operate that way. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Good, good. Listen, let's get to the bit about when we know it's not there. And I'll give you an example to tee us up from my days at Microsoft with Steve Ballmer. I've used this sometimes, but it always comes back to me because it was a very humbling moment. He's really an amazing guy in terms of being open about his shortcomings. Here he is at Safeco Field, big company meeting, jumping up and down the stage in his big inspirational way. And then he slows down and he's out of breath and he goes, my wife and people I work with have been giving me feedback. I'm always going to be open. I'm going to say it the way it is. But what they're asking me to do is to also be respectful. And I give him great credit for that moment, being in the audience and experiencing that, because it was very impactful for me to take that ownership, to recognize that there's one of my favorite things for leadership is intent and impact, right? Intent might be great, that we want to challenge the convention, we want to push the boundaries and seek for the highest performance. But without this aspect of respect, and exactly the way you defined it, if you're not open to really listening to every point of view, you're going to miss out on it. Tell me some of your war stories and how you've navigated things that are on the surface or the system has become pretty toxic or difficult to deal with. And how, as a leader, you've navigated that to get things back on track.
So there are three types of experiences I'll give you. One was a piece of business that we won, and I was overseeing the pitch and we won it. But while I was overseeing the pitch, I began to feel a little squirrely about the company's leadership that we were going to work with. But we decided we'd go ahead. And after we won it, in 2 weeks after we won it, I went to my management and said we should resign it, even before we really started, because now seeing up close, my gut instinct turned out to be true. And it was basically a company which unfortunately no longer is, or is such a shrunken self that it's no longer there, which is Sears, which is a big Chicago headquartered company.
Yeah.
But Sears was run by a gentleman by the name of Eddie Lampert, who, because of some kidnapping thing, would not leave his boat off the coast. All of his calls he'd have with us was from his boat, his yacht somewhere. Okay. But he had a team, and his team, I began to realize, were good people, but they did not have any agency. And B, I began to realize they had no real intention to pay us.
Oh,
Okay. And I began, and I began to realize that we would start working, and then they would. And so I said, before we start working, and so the first thing that tends to happen is I had too much respect for my own organization and our own standards to for me to walk away from something, or not me to walk away, but to recommend we walk away. Because obviously you had spent 90 days pitching something, you win something, and then you say, I guess we got the wrong thing. So that's one. Second example is something that I wrote in my first book. And it's basically.
And actually, sorry, I love that when Turd I'd love to hear the impact, the response from others on your team internally.
Yeah, so
this is astonishing. It's a fantastic.
Yeah, so
off.
So the response was actually, we quickly won a lot of new business, and everybody basically said, you chose us, and you chose certain things like values over a client and money. Now, whether we get paid or not was an issue, but the whole idea was we had a client, pitched a client, and then we walked away from a client. And it's you don't want to be known as an agency who walks away from a client. So we have to do it very carefully, because clients fire agencies. Agencies don't fire clients. And you don't want to go proudly saying you fired a client, because clients will say, wait, that's not the way it works. But what they basically said is, you selected us. And that went into sort of legendary for us to attract and retain talent, because we said, look, obviously we have to pay attention to clients, but if clients treat us badly, then at some particular stage, we have to be ready to walk away. Otherwise, they will keep treating us badly. But more importantly, in those cases, I said, I won't able to attract and retain world-class talent. And if I can't attract and retain world-class talent, I won't have any clients at some stage. Because in our business, clients hire us for our people. We don't have some copyrighted way.
I just love this. I love it. Yeah.
So that is, I think, a big way. And then I eventually took that pretty quickly to a thinking that drove the most popular chapter of my first book, which is called Restoring the Soul of Business, Staying Human in the Age of Data. And the chapter is called The Turd on the Table. Okay. And the idea is, we sit around in a room, and in the middle of a room, there's something brown and moist, and everybody pretends it's a brownie when it's actually a piece of shit. But nobody's saying it. And the reason they don't say it's a piece of shit is because it's their boss's piece of shit. And if they say it's a piece of shit, or they're new to the company and that's what everyone's saying is brownie, and maybe they don't see it, or most likely because they've already got too much shit to clean up, to call out another piece of shit means getting another assignment. So people pretend. And that is why I tell people, why, if you can't call out the turd on the table, you end up with Enron, you end up with Wells Fargo, you end up with bad software on the 737 MAX. So in effect, I always ask people to make sure that they feel comfortable calling out the turd on the table. Because what it basically says is, nothing is more irrespectful than operating under a lying operating system. Right? So
100%.
And so I've always basically said, if you have lying operating system and experiences, you lose. LOSE, lying operating system experiences. Those are the two things. I have the specific stories of Sears, but then I've extracted it and said, we must talk about the turd on the table. And sometimes the turd on the table is, this is a very difficult client. They're really treating us badly. We all have to recognize that if we can't change this in 90 days, we're going to do something about it. But even if you tell people that you recognize the issue while they are being disrespected, at least there's a form of, I respect the fact that we're being disrespected. I'm going to go fix it. But let's go see if we can fix it because obviously it's revenue and clients.
I know what's also coming up for me is the agency situation is, of course, you're beholden to clients and want to
Yes.
win business, but it's also analogous to P&E and VC dating, right? When they're exploring places to invest.
Yes.
I find that there's that dating game portion of wine and dine, but do we really roll up our sleeves and get real about values and where the rubber meets the road and what would lead to walking away? Of course, money. If there are money issues, we know in business, that's the easy reason to say we walk away. But what you're hitting on, I think, is so much more critical.
Yeah. And what happens is that is eventually what people do. So what people can do is they can take people talent of any sort of organization. People can take a lot, but what they will not take is someone treating them like they're scum. Okay. And that they keep with them. Even if they won't say anything, it's in them that, because in effect, they're saying, you are treating me in a demeaning manner and I will never forget it. Okay. And that is very important to remember. So I always tell people, we all make mistakes. We say stupid things, etc. Fix it quickly so people know that it was your mistake or it was a situation that it's, because if you're in the world of business and it's hurly-burly and everything else, you always somewhere around run the boat into the ground. But often it's because of the hurly-burly and you're not aiming a boat onto your head. It just so happened.
So, we could go on forever here. I try and keep these short and brief for people to get sound bites. Closing thoughts, my friend, on I know you opened with the definition of respect, but tips on how to really do harder things, because what I'm hearing in all of this is it's not easy stuff to do. It takes dedication and commitment to really make it happen.
Yeah. So I believe that everyone listening here has to recognize that regardless of the company they work and the level they work, they may not all be managers or bosses, but everyone is a leader. So I basically believe leader is about zone of influence and not zone of control. Leader is people that people want to follow. A boss is a job title that people have to follow. And today, the need for courageous, empathetic, and respectful leadership is critical. One, because of a polarized environment where we can't see the middle ground, and be respectful gets us there. That's one. Second is, in a age of AI, respect is emotion and AI is math, and humans will bring emotion and not math to this game. And that's the other one. And the third, why it's very important, is whether we like it or not. And like today, I had a conversation with folks, and they basically said, you, in a very bizarre way, inspired us. But you basically said, here is why you think you're optimistic. But before we get to the optimism, we have to go through some pain. And I was explaining what AI will do to jobs. And I said, look, AI will not necessarily replace work, but AI will reduce the number of full-time jobs. And anybody who doesn't believe that is singing songs that make no sense. But in that, we are going to do things, whether we call it right sizing, downsizing, resizing. And nothing is as emotional as that in an organization. And through these, treating people with respect becomes very critical.
Fantastic, Rishad. Also, I'm hearing a thread through all of this of agency.
Yes.
Regardless of where you are on the continuum of impact with layoffs and things that are already happening, if we can remember to have agency, because we give our power away too easily.
Yeah, we definitely do. And what people say is we don't have one. I said, of course you have power. Everybody has power. Everybody has a sense of agency. And we should make sure that we recognize and keep it. We may not have all the agency we want, but we don't have none.
Yeah. Wonderful. It's been a delight, Rishad. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Bobby. Thanks for inviting me.